What's a story that comes to mind when you think of ancient Rome? If you're like most people, it's likely a story of a colossal empire spanning the land of 3 continents. A story of massive armies of well-disciplined legionnaires subduing barbarian hordes with ease. A story of huge infrastructure projects that were so large and sophisticated that they wouldn't be matched for well over 1,000 years afterwards. A gleaming empire setting order to the chaos of the Mediterranean world. The picture that most likely didn't pop in your head was one of a city-state locked in a zero-sum game for control of its region of central Italy. A story of a state who's on the rise, but is surrounded by powerful hill tribes to the east and sophisticated, well-organized city-states to the north. In this video, I would like to take you back to this part of Rome's history and look at Rome's geopolitical situation in the year 338 BCE. So without further ado, let's get into it. You can't discuss geopolitics without first discussing geography. Rome's territory hugs the west-central coast of the Italian peninsula, with its heartland being the flat and fertile region of Latium. This makes Latium somewhat unique in the mountainous region of Italy. In fact, the word Latium literally translates from Latin to flat or wide, which means the Romans were saying, we're from the flatlands, and people knew exactly where they were talking about just because it was such a unique feature in the Italian peninsula. These flat and fertile lands are great for growing food and transporting goods. Latium is also really good at transporting armies, which is really good if you're the Romans because you're able to move your legions pretty quickly from one point to the other within your heartland. But it also is really bad because armies are able to invade your territory extremely easily. In fact, throughout Rome's history, it's been invaded on multiple occasions, with Rome itself being sacked less than 100 years ago. This means that in order for Rome to defend itself, it has to stay extremely strong internally and be able to exert its force outside of its heartland to prevent any type of outward invasion. One way the Romans extended their power outside their heartland was establishing fortified settlements in recently conquered territories and stocking them full of Roman citizens. These act in a similar way as a medieval castle in controlling the land and people around it. Since Rome didn't have a standing army at its time, it definitely helped to have 300 or 500 citizens of fighting age being able to hold territory that Rome just took. But this isn't the only benefit. This also helps Rome alleviate the internal pressure in the city of Rome itself by sending its poorer people to areas where they can actually have land, as well as increasing the numbers of citizens over time as those colonies grow larger and larger, and that increases the size of the military that the Romans can use to extend their power outside of their heartland. It also helps in Romanizing the newly conquered areas. Rome's territory extends south into the lands of Campania. This is a recent addition to Rome's territory, just being added 3 years ago. Capua was being invaded at the time by hill tribesmen and came asking for Rome for help, and ended up offering Rome their land in exchange for protection. Capua was some of the most fertile lands in Italy, so accepting this grant of land was a no-brainer. The Capuans were given citizenship without voting rights. Now, the thing about the Capuans is they are a completely different ethnic group. They speak a different language, they have different customs, different religion. So you do have an alien power ruling over a country, which is bound to cause some type of resentment in the end, which means that Rome kind of has a tenuous control over Capua at this time. And it's even more so tenuous because between Capua and Rome is a large marshland called the Pontine Marshes, which is extremely difficult to transport troops through and setting up supply lines for those troops. In the case of a foreign invasion or the Capuans rebelling, the Roman response could be too slow and their army's ability to resupply the territory might be too weak to actually hold it. But for now, Rome controls 2 of the best pieces of real estate in the central Italian peninsula. There is a saying that good lands make soft men, but in the case of Rome having the best lands in a bad neighborhood, just means that you're going to have to maintain a military edge in order to hold them. And Rome might have some problems, but maintaining a military edge is not one of them. Rome has a large and effective military. The Roman state relies on a conscription model where the landowning classes provide their own arms and armor and fight for Rome's interests whenever necessary. And it's necessary almost yearly, making Rome's citizen army a very well-disciplined, semi-professional force. Rome's style of fighting is perfect for the flat plains of Latium and Campania. It implements a Greek-style phalanx, which is extremely effective on flat land. A phalanx relies on deep formations of men forming into a line, locking their circular shields together, lowering their spears, and marching towards the enemy as a single unit. Basically an unbeatable formation of shields and spears. The only way you can defeat it is if you're able to flank it or you have a larger phalanx. And it's unlikely that Rome will face a larger phalanx, since Rome's fertile lands and its many colonies set up in conquered territory has resulted in a massive population. Rome's male citizen population is an estimated 345,000. Now, to put this in perspective, Athens, by far the largest city-state in classical Greece, at the very height of its empire, had a citizen population of 35,000. And then to add to that, Rome has an allied population of 145,000 that is subjected to the same conscription requirements as a Roman citizen. This gives Rome the capability to field 2 armies each fighting season with 20,000 men in it apiece. Rome can fight a 2-front war and still be larger or equal size to each army in either theater. Now, having the ability to field 2 armies of that size is pretty much useless if you don't also have the state apparatus to organize, supply those soldiers, pay them, as well as tax the farmers at home to pay those soldiers. This is another strength of Rome. Rome in its early history came to the dominance of a very sophisticated people known as the Etruscans, and Rome learned a great deal about how to set up and organize a centralized bureaucratic state. Because of this, Rome is able to levy taxes effectively, raise armies, build and maintain public infrastructure such as roads and temples. And at the heart of this democratic state is the Roman Senate, from which all domestic and foreign policy is dictated from. The Senate then relies on democratically elected officials to implement these policies. To prevent these officials from getting too much power and trying to make themselves kings, the Romans hold yearly elections. This creates a problem for the state, with army generals and other high officials being rotated out yearly with varying levels of competence each year. This also creates a situation where the Rome's highest military officials, known as consuls, know they only have 1 year to win a major victory and obtain honors, so they can put themselves into risky situations that a king or a chieftain who often had more times wouldn't risk, and this can bring catastrophe on the state. And one group of people who'd be happy to see Rome have a military catastrophe are their former masters and current geopolitical rivals, the Etruscans, a people to the north of Rome who less than a century ago controlled much of the Italian peninsula. They are an advanced, sophisticated civilization who has Rome's ability to mobilize their entire force of their state and to achieve their geopolitical needs. The problem is, even though the Etruscans are culturally homogeneous as a civilization, they are not politically homogeneous. The Etruscans are separated into a dozen or so city-states who have separate foreign policy. If these states saw Rome as a problem for their future independence, they might unite against them. But for now, the Etruscans have their hands full in dealing with an aggressive people to their north, known as the Gauls. The Gauls have driven the Etruscans from their richest lands, the Po Valley, and have even had armies as far south as Rome. Remember how I told you that Rome was sacked less than 100 years ago? This was the Gauls. Even though the Gauls have inflicted a lot of damage on Rome at that time, right now they are tying down and dividing the Etruscans, making them less able to respond to the rising power of Rome. To the southeast, the Romans have their greatest geopolitical rivals, the Samnites. The Samnites are a confederation of 4 hill tribes who share a common language and religious identity. They have a large population thanks to their fertile mountain valleys where agriculture is practiced, but for the most part their population lives a semi-nomadic existence as animal herders. Their population may be large, but is no match for the Romans, and being a confederation of tribes, they lack the centralized state apparatus to quickly build up armies and support them the way the Romans can. But they do have one huge advantage on the Romans: the geography of Samnium. Samnium is a very mountainous region and acts almost as a fortress. The Samnites know all the passes that a large army have to take to get into their lands and how to defend them. Add to this the fact that Rome's military isn't built for mountainous warfare. The phalanxes are just too easily broken up on uneven ground and cut to pieces. This means that Samnia can easily attack Rome, but Rome will have a very difficult time reaching Samnium. This is a very scary situation for Rome, since not only does Samnium share a large border with Rome now, but they also have history. They are contending for the area of Capua. The hill tribes of the Capuans actually begged the Romans to help them against were the Samnites. The Samnites were on the verge of taking the area when the Romans pushed them out. There is currently an uneasy peace between these two nations, but with their history and long shared border, it is unlikely to last. So as you can see, Rome is a strong player in the region of central Italy, maybe even the strongest. With its good lands, centralized government, and massive population, it has carved out a very powerful state for itself. But at this time in human history, in the Iron Age of the Mediterranean world, it isn't uncommon for people to rise to power only to have that power taken away from them as groups around them unite to bring them down to a level where they are no longer a threat to them. Rome has many geopolitical headwinds at their back, but only time will tell if it will work out for them.